I used to believe love was unbreakable. But the night I walked into that room, I saw the truth. It can shatter in an instant. I found her there, her eyes wide with guilt, her dress in disarray as if it could hide the betrayal. My heart froze. Then it burned. Every whispered promise, every tender moment. Now, just ashes in my hands. How could she? How could I have been so blind? In that moment, I wasn't just a husband betrayed. I became a man possessed by a dark, unforgiving rage. A short story. We need to talk and regret. Sunday, March 17th, 2047. It was a few minutes after midnight. Tom Calvert was in Dublin for work, wearing a fancy suit and a gold watch. He looked like a wealthy man, but had a sad look on his face instead of a real smile. The bartender approached him and said, "Last call. We close in 25 minutes." Tom nodded, trying to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. The bartender asked, "What's wrong?" Tom glanced at the name tag on the bartender, which read, Patrick, and let out a small laugh. The classic Irish name, Patrick. "It's nothing much, just that my whole life feels like a waste." Patrick raised his eyebrows, looking at him curiously. "What do you mean?" he asked with a friendly Irish accent. Tom sighed. "Just what I said. It feels like my whole life has been a waste." Patrick looked Tom up and down. "But you seem very successful." "I don't think your life is a waste," Patrick said gently. Tom sighed and replied, "I run a clothing business for my father-in-law, but I feel like my life is a waste." Patrick shook his head and said, "Regret is very costly. I know 3 things. First, I'm the best bartender around, and that means I'm a good listener. Second, you are a rich man, and that usually means you're a good tipper. Third, since you are the last one here, we have time to hear your story." Tom chuckled, feeling relaxed by Patrick's easygoing nature. "I am indeed wealthy," Tom admitted, "and people often think that's all that matters. But what if I told you I've been down a rough path? I hurt someone I shouldn't have. I'm married to a woman who broke my heart and changed me into someone I don't recognize. Now I can't leave this marriage. I have 2 sons that I didn't raise, and I often find myself with temporary partners instead. I would give it all up in an instant if I could." Patrick nodded. "So you're wealthy and have some romantic partners. Sounds like a typical rich guy." Tom replied, "I guess I am typical. I had a woman stay with me last night for a short time. On a scale from 1 to 10, she was an 11. He shook his head. "But it's not worth it." Patrick said, "Let's go back to the start. You mentioned you would give it all up, and it seems like it all began when you hurt someone you shouldn't have." Tom agreed. "Her name is Allie. Well, it was. Her husband hurt her a year ago. When he did, she fell down the stairs and got seriously injured. I feel like that's my fault, too." Patrick shook his head and replied, "If you weren't the one who hurt her, then you didn't cause her injury." Tom responded, "I still feel responsible. You see, about a year ago, I saw her in the checkout line at Walmart. We started chatting and decided to go across the street to the mall food court for some iced tea to catch up. We were remembering the past, and I apologized for my actions years ago. She smiled, but what she told me next surprised me. Even after all this time, it still hurt her, but it truly shocked me. When I betrayed her by not standing by her and choosing my current wife instead, she revealed something very important. She said I was the only man she really loved. She had strong feelings for me and wanted to share a special moment right after prom. She had planned everything out carefully. We had been dating for 3 years, and her parents even supported us by reserving a room at a local motel. Patrick nodded and said, "There's more to this story." Tom added, "As we were talking, a tall man was standing behind us. I didn't realize it at the time, but he was her husband who had been treating her very badly. Right after I finished that last sentence, the big man said in a voice that felt very unsettling, said, 'Allie, you need to come home.' She turned pale, nodded, and walked away in silence. That night she passed away. I found out about it from the committee planning our 30th high school reunion a month ago." Patrick flinched. Tom sighed. "I messed up 2 lives. Patrick responded, "You did not hurt her." Tom replied, "That's true, but right after graduation, she met and married someone terrible. If we had stayed together a little longer, even if we didn't end up marrying, maybe she wouldn't have rushed into a relationship with him. She suffered through 29 years of that. If we hadn't broken up, she would have gone to Martin's University on a full art scholarship, and her life would have been so different. It's all my fault. Patrick said, "Hold on. Start from the beginning. I still don't think it's your fault." Tom started to remember Monday, April 24th, 2017. Tom got to school and began looking for his girlfriend, Allie. Brittany, the head cheerleader, was at his locker. She looked at him with pity and said, "I'm sorry to tell you, but Allie is over in D Hall. She is with my ex, Chad." Tom quickly walked to D Hall and saw Allie with Chad. Just as he got close, he saw them share a kiss. Allie jumped when she saw him, and he took that as a sign she was guilty. His heart sank. His girlfriend was not just unfaithful, but she was with Chad, the arrogant guy everyone disliked. Furious, he glared at her and shouted, "You betrayed me!" before storming away. Allie ran after him, calling, "It's not what it looks like, Tom! Tom!" Devastated, Allie fell to the ground as Tom walked away. When he returned to his locker, Brittany was still there. She said, "I warned you. I'm sorry, but I thought you should know that my ex-boyfriend was sneaking around with your girlfriend. Prom is coming, and I'm not with Chad anymore, so I'm free now." Tom looked up at the stunning blonde Brittany and asked, "Really?" Brittany nodded excitedly. Tom felt sad but couldn't believe his luck. This beautiful girl wanted to go to prom with him. He smiled back at her. For someone with a broken heart, he was recovering quickly. Tuesday, April 25th, 2017. Before class that morning, Allie approached Tom and said, "Tom, please listen to me. Chad talked to me about art class. We chatted for a moment, and then he suddenly kissed me. I didn't kiss him back. He just went for it without asking me first." Tom looked into her eyes and saw she was serious. However, he found it hard to believe what she was saying and replied, "Wow, you really can tell some tall tales. I don't want to see you again." "Go away!" Tom left angrily, and Allie fell down, feeling her heart break again. Saturday, April 29th, 2017. Brittany called Tom's phone at 9 that morning. "Tom, hi. My dad wants to meet you. I told him all about you and that you're taking me to prom." Tom sighed. "Really? Already?" Brittany sounded excited. "Yes, he's really looking forward to it." Tom sighed again. "Okay, I guess since we are going to prom together." Brittany said, "Great! Dress nicely. Dad doesn't like messy clothes. The address is 16 Windsor Court." Tom put on his khaki pants and the red shirt from his part-time job at Target. It was the best he could do on short notice. It was a warm, sunny spring day, already in the low 70s. Tom checked the address on his phone and saw it was at the north end of town where the big houses were. His family lived in a small house that had belonged to his grandparents, which his dad had inherited long before the town became the fancy suburb it was now. Tom's anxiety grew as he approached the gate at Windsor Court. When he reached it, he said nervously, "I'm Tom Calvert here to see Mr. Randolph." The guard barely nodded before pressing a button to open the gate for him. As Tom drove past several large mansions, he felt out of place. These houses were impressive, with extra buildings and space for many cars. When he arrived at his destination, he noticed Brittany waiting at the door with a warm smile. As Tom stepped out of the car, Brittany greeted him with a friendly kiss. She smiled and said, "You'll get used to that and more." Brittany then took him inside, guiding him through a few different living rooms that looked very fancy. They made their way to the back, where a large pool and deck awaited them. On the other side was a pool house that was almost as big as the house Tom lived in. Brittany smiled as she walked up to the table and introduced him to a man in his early 40s. He was good-looking enough that even though Tom was straight, he could see that Brittany's father was attractive. Next to him stood a woman who had a gentle beauty. She was graceful and looked younger than her age, thanks to cosmetic surgery. Brittany said happily, "Daddy, Mom, this is Tom, my date for prom." The man looked Tom over, and then his face broke into a smile. Tom replied, Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Randolph." The man chuckled, saying, "Call me Jim, and this is my wife, Helen. I don't like being called Mr." Tom replied, okay, Jim." Jim smiled and said, Relax. Brittany likes you, so I like you for now. I usually like most of her friends, except for Chad. He reminds me of Eddie Haskell from Leave It to Beaver. He acts slick, but isn't as smart as he thinks. I'll be honest. What is your rank in school? My daughter says you are very smart and hardworking. Tom replied, 8. Jim nodded. Great, number 8 out of over 1,200. You're just as smart as my daughter says. Please, sit down. What does your dad do? Tom answered, he drives a truck. Jim smiled and said, that's good, honest work. I like that. McGovern's Trucking is a good company. Tom replied, I didn't say where he worked. Jim explained, I need to be careful about who dates my daughter. Tom asked, so you had me checked out. Am I okay? My family isn't rich. Jim smiled and said, yes, you are very impressive in many ways. I don't want my daughter dating someone like Chad again. Brittany made a mistake with him, but that's all sorted now. Tom sat down next to Brittany when a maid came out and asked, what would you like to drink, sir? It took Tom a moment to realize she was talking to him, and he said, iced tea is good. After chatting for a bit, Jim asked, where are you planning to go to college? Tom replied, probably IU. Jim continued, did you apply to Notre Dame? Tom answered, it's my dream school. I got accepted, but they didn't give me enough scholarships to go. I'm a decent football player, but not good enough to play there. I also got into Martin's, but they didn't offer me enough money either. Jim nodded. It's time to change this. He took out his phone and called someone. Harold, this is Jim Randolph. Yes, I know it's Saturday. Listen, you want that building, and I said I would pay for it, but here's the thing. You accepted a young man named Tom Calvert from Carmel, Indiana. You didn't offer him enough scholarship money to attend, and you need to fix that. Give him a full scholarship, including books. There was a moment of silence. Jim continued, I don't care what your usual process is, just fix it. He told me your school is his dream. Is it all right as long as it doesn't cost anything? Jim looked at Tom, who was surprised, and just nodded. Great. Just keep in mind that the building will be named after my grandfather, Jim said. He leaned back in his chair, feeling pleased. All settled. Now my daughter has her boyfriend at college. Tom thought, boyfriend? Feeling a little lost. Brittany rushed over to hug her father and then turned to give Tom a quick kiss on the cheek. Jim didn't seem bothered by Brittany's show of affection. Thank you, Tom managed to say. Jim smiled warmly. It makes my daughter happy. I can see why she likes you. You're smart, good-looking, and hard-working. You don't get to the top of your class by slacking off. Like Chad. Friday, May 5th, 2017. Tom arrived at Brittany's house in a limo he didn't rent, wearing a tuxedo that Jim Randolph had helped him pick out. He rang the doorbell, and Jim opened the door with a big smile, saying, Welcome! Tom stepped inside. Jim continued, My daughter and her team are finishing her hair and makeup. Please have a seat. Tom sat down, and Jim handed him a hotel room key card. Tom looked at the card in surprise and asked, Sir? Jim sighed and replied, Come on, we both know what happens after prom. I just want you to be comfortable. Tom was stunned into silence. Jim said, Seriously, you're both young and attractive. It's natural for you to want to be together. Tom still didn't know how to respond. Jim rolled his eyes. Just so you know, Brittany isn't inexperienced. She's been with someone before, but she wants to be with someone she cares about. I have told her about dating and how having too many partners before marriage might make it harder for her to find a good husband. Tom said, Anyway, the room is reserved for tonight and tomorrow night. Bring her back by 1 in the afternoon on Sunday and remember 3 things. First, being with a woman means you should care for her feelings, not hurt her. Second, she needs to agree to everything you want to do. And third, a good man puts others first. She is taking care of herself, so enjoy your time together. And really, treat her with respect. There was an unspoken warning in his words about hurting Brittany, but he had no plans to cause anyone any harm. Brittany came down wearing a dress that was quite daring for the prom. It had thin straps and showed more skin than most dresses, leaving little to the imagination. The slit on both sides of her dress was high. Tom said, You look amazing! He meant it, and Brittany lit up with joy. Jim was happy to hear Tom's kind words. The limousine took them to the prom. Tom felt relieved that Allie wasn't there. It seemed strange to him how they were officially together, even though he had never really asked her to be his girlfriend. They just were. Chad came with Madison James. Brittany surprised Tom. She didn't want to go to the party after prom. She just wanted to dance with him and looked at him with loving eyes as they moved together. When Chad tried to join in, Brittany shot him a fierce look and said, "No way." Brittany loved to dance close and enjoyed sharing sweet moments with him. She smiled, and her smile showed that she truly wanted to be with Tom. At 10, Brittany asked, "Did my dad give you the key card?" Tom was taken aback that she knew. Brittany rolled her eyes playfully and said, "Silly. I'm open with my parents. They know. I'm really excited about tonight and tomorrow. We have the special honeymoon suite all set up. My dad took care of everything, and I can't wait for the surprises that lie ahead." After sharing a warm kiss, they got into the limo and headed to the Upper Windsor Hotel in downtown Indianapolis. When they arrived on the 10th floor at room 1001, Tom was amazed by how big the room was. It had two areas, a living room separated by large pocket doors, and a bedroom with a bed that was larger than any he had seen before. Tom looked around and exclaimed, "Wow!" Brittany placed her small bag down, closed the door, and moved closer to Tom to share another kiss. She playfully smiled and said, "Help me with my dress." With a gentle touch, Tom unzipped her dress while Brittany expertly undid the straps at the top. The dress slipped down smoothly, revealing her elegant outfit underneath. Tom watched as Brittany stepped out of her shoes and turned to face him, giving him a playful smile. She moved closer and asked softly, "Do you like what you see?" She kissed him gently. Tom felt overwhelmed but tried to speak. Brittany stopped him with a reassuring touch, saying, "Just relax and enjoy." In that moment, they shared a quiet connection, and Tom felt a deep sense of comfort and release. She rinsed her mouth thoroughly, then turned to him with a smile and said, "I just wanted to freshen up." She kissed him and added, "Seeing you happy makes me happy." After that, she took his hand and led him to the bed. She then stepped into the bathroom for a moment, returning with a relaxed expression. She looked at him and asked, "Would you be willing to do something for me?" He nodded, and she gave him simple, clear instructions on how to make her feel good. Her tone was calm and kind, ensuring he understood what she liked without any pressure. He followed her instructions carefully. She used soft sounds to show him what felt good and what didn't. Brittany was guiding him patiently, making sure he didn't feel awkward. As he looked down at her, he realized he was sharing this moment for the first time. She smiled back, showing encouragement. He took his time, moving slowly and gently. Since he hadn't been with anyone for a while, he felt confident for the first few moments. As she responded to him, he noticed her breathing changed, and she seemed to relax and enjoy it. She laughed softly and said, "That was great." He got up while she took a washcloth to clean herself, making sure she wouldn't make a mess. After she was done, she returned, removed the messy bedspread, and laid down a towel before settling next to him. She snuggled close and said, "That was amazing," with a happy sigh. They rested together for a while. She shared how much she enjoyed the night and how he was such a caring boyfriend. She said, "I loved how you let me go first. The last guy didn't let me finish. I'm sorry for bringing him up. Just know you are already the best and we've only been together once." They enjoying each other's company until they heard a knock on the door. Brittany gave him a playful smile and walked to the door. There was a porter standing there with two bags. One of them he recognized as his own. Brittany went over to her purse, took out a $10 bill, and handed it to the surprised porter. Once the porter left, Brittany chuckled and walked to the bed. "That was fun. Anyway, I have clothes for tomorrow. My dad got us some casual outfits. We have tickets to see The Weeknd at the Old National Center for a concert. We can check out downtown, too. We have lunch at Benny's and dinner at Rodizio 10. We'll have brunch back at Benny's on Sunday at 10. As they enjoyed their time together, things heated up. Brittany smiled and kept the mood light, connecting with him in a playful way. She leaned in for close kisses, making the moment special. "2 times in a row where I got to finish first," she said with a playful grin. "You are a wonderful partner, Tom." She cleaned up and gently pushed him off the bed before slipping under the covers. They lay down side by side. She quickly drifted off to sleep, smiling. Sunday, May 7th, 2017. The limousine took them back to her house. Tom noticed his car looked new, clean, and shiny. Tom felt nervous about how her parents would react after their weekend together. When they walked in, only Jim was home. Jim looked a little unsure until Brittany jumped into his arms and said, "Daddy, it was great! He is kind, caring, and so much fun." Her voice softened. He always made sure I was happy first. Jim smiled at Tom and nodded. "I knew you were a good guy. Thank you for making my little girl so happy." Brittany asked, "Where's Mom?" Jim replied shortly, "Paris." Brittany decided to drop the topic. Tom came back to the moment and said, "Strange, right?" Patrick nodded. "So their parents set up for you to date their daughter?" Tom agreed with a nod. Patrick went to the front door, locked it, turned the sign to closed, and pulled down the blinds. Tom started to stand up, but Patrick said, "You can't leave me hanging. What happened next?" Tom said, "Well, we fell in love quickly. We got married in August, right before starting college. Brittany was not like most young women. She didn't want a big wedding. To me, it felt big with 200 guests, but for a rich girl, it wasn't that much." The ceremony was in a small room at the country club where her dad was a member. Room and board at Notre Dame. Our new home Friday, August 25th, 2017. Brittany happily put the key in the lock and opened the door. She stepped into their 3-room apartment and twirled around, shouting, "It's ours, ours, ours!" She ran over to him and gave him a quick kiss. Brittany was okay with their simple student apartment. On the first day of class, he went to the business building while she went to the art building. When they both got home that evening, Brittany said, "Please sit down because I need to tell you something important. First, starting next week, I will model for my life drawing classes. Second, I will also join in some events at the art museum, and they are—" Tom wanted to let you know he was being loyal, so they were taking part in something together. "Life drawing means no clothes, right?" Tom asked. Brittany nodded her head. "Is that just in class?" he continued. Brittany replied, "No, you'll need to be okay with me posing alone in class. I made sure you can accompany me for anything private or at the museum." "And what if I say no?" Tom questioned. Brittany explained, "Tom, the class is just that. A class with other students around. For the private sessions, you'll be there to look out for me." Tom sighed and agreed. It was a Monday, August 28th, 2017. Tom entered the art building searching for room 108. It was almost 8, and he didn't have a class then. As he got to the door, a student in front of him went in first. Inside, Brittany stood in a robe, looking casual. When she saw him, she rolled her eyes but walked over and said, "Look, here's the classroom. We have easels and drawing pads." Tom sighed as Brittany looked at him and said, "You're being a bit unsure. It would be great if you could relax and not make a big deal out of this. I'm with you and only you. Honestly, I'm looking forward to posing. I'll be posing by myself, okay?" She stood in front of him, putting her arms down at her sides. Then she added, "If we're all set, you can help me take off this robe." Tom sighed again and gently loosened the tie, letting the robe drop away. Brittany was indeed without any clothes, and gave him a soft kiss on the lips. Then she turned and walked to the stage, ready for her first pose. Tom quietly said, "Sorry," to her. She smiled back and whispered, "Love you." Feeling a bit better but also foolish, Tom headed out. It was Friday, September 15th, 2017, when they arrived at the Branson Art Museum around 6 in the evening. Brittany had her robe on again, while Tom was dressed in khaki pants and a polo shirt. A man approached Brittany. He greeted her with an exaggerated kiss on the cheek and said, "Brittany, great to see you. Please take off the robe and join us." Tom didn't like the man right away. Brittany said, "That's Jean Renier. He is the head of the art school, runs this museum, and knows a lot about art." Brittany took off her robe and gave it to Tom. She pointed at some hooks and said, "Robe goes on those hooks. I'm art tonight. I'm like a moving piece of art." Tom replied, "Looks like a way to get girls to show off their bodies." A man walked by. Tom felt uncomfortable. He really didn't want to see that. Brittany shook her head. "He's an expert. He helps run this museum." They all gathered at 6:30. Jean Renier stood at a podium ready to speak. "Welcome to the Walking Art event. We have many lovely people sharing their beauty tonight. Enjoy both the moving and displayed art. Most of the evening was simply about walking around. Some people gave nice comments to Brittany as they looked at the displays. The event was set to finish at 10 that night. Just before 10, Jean Renier walked over to Tom and Brittany. He said, "Thank you for being part of tonight. I know it might seem strange to those who aren't in the art world, but tonight was a big success." Tom felt that Rainier was teasing him, but there wasn't much he could do. Rainier had not done anything wrong, and Brittany stayed close to him all evening. As they left, Tom said, "He's not trustworthy. Be careful around him." Brittany replied, "I know. He is clever and not to be trusted. I watch out for him." Patrick asked, "So you told her about him?" Tom nodded and said, "The problem is, he had plenty of time. She did a lot of modeling, and I was there for every event for the first 4 years. The trouble is, she stayed in school for her master's degree while I had to start working for her dad. It took 7 years, but he finally succeeded in the end." Patrick said, "You know, for almost 7 years she was totally faithful. I wouldn't call those years a waste. You told me she loved you and you loved her. Sure, she may not be thinking straight, but you did have almost 7 good years together." Tom nodded but replied, "All built on a lie." Patrick asked, "What do you mean?" Tom said, "Now it's the end of my marriage to Brittany." Monday, October 14th, 2024. Tom came home to find Brittany sitting on the couch. Her eyes looked different. Something was off. Tom looked at her and asked, "What's wrong?" Brittany sighed and said, "Tom, we need to talk." Patrick jumped in and said, "Uh-oh." Tom agreed. "Uh-oh is right." Tom looked at his wife and remembered that, as a businessman, he should stay quiet and listen. Sometimes people share too much without realizing it. Brittany said, "You need to let me finish. This is final. I have made my decision and it will stay that way." Tom felt a heavy weight in his stomach. He knew this was going to be a big problem, and he was sure he would not like it. Brittany spoke up, "There is an art show in Las Vegas next weekend and I'm going." Tom replied, "I notice you say I and not we." Brittany nodded and added, "I am going with Jean Renier." Tom said, "And when you say with, you mean you will share a hotel room?" Brittany confirmed, "I've only been with 2 men before and I want to gain more experience. I love you, but this is just for fun. He is charming, connected in my art circle, and a well-known expert in art." Tom thought to himself, hate it was not strong enough for what he was hearing. He said firmly, "First, this feels wrong. Second, it is wrong. And third, this could lead to us breaking up." Brittany countered, "It is not wrong. It is just for fun." "I still care about you, but I'm seeing someone else," Brittany said. Tom replied, "Any affair is cheating unless both people agree, and I definitely do not agree." Brittany responded, "I'm telling you in advance so it won't be considered cheating. I've been faithful to you for 7 years, and I want to try new things in life." Tom was shocked and exclaimed, "So this is the famous 7-year itch." Brittany said, "Now that we've talked about it, I need to make a list of things to pack." She walked away, ignoring Tom as he called after her, "This is not over." Later that afternoon, Tom's father-in-law, Jim, visited and said, "I heard about the argument between you and my daughter. You're not going to divorce her." Tom replied firmly, "Oh, I will." Jim shook his head. "No, you won't." Tom asked, "How do you know that?" Jim explained, "I hear reports about my wife and daughter every day. I've been paying close attention for the last 2 months, and I sensed trouble was brewing. Anyway, you are not getting a divorce from her." Tom replied, "I know you will let me go." Jim responded, "Oh, it's much worse than that." Tom asked, "Are you making threats?" Jim said, "No, these are promises. This is bigger than me. The board has people who are much wealthier than I am, and they know powerful billionaires who control everything. They will ruin you, and I can't do anything to stop them. You are too important to them. Your future looks very bright. It's like living in a beautiful prison." Tom inquired, "How long have you known about this?" Jim explained, "I started getting bad news about 2 months ago. It's probably my wife's negative influence. I think Rainier finally convinced her about a month ago. That's what my reports suggest. I keep an eye on both my wife and my daughter. Brittany seems to resist her more. She gave me the same excuses just 2.5 years after we got married. I haven't been close to her since. She was only at our house the day I met you for about 3 hours before she had to leave for, well, I don't know." I stopped reading the report about her because it really annoys me. Tom said, I won't let someone else take my place. Jim replied, Of course not, don't be foolish. Remember the fashion show last week when you met Jessica, Jenny, and Julie? I made you go because they were there for you. Tom asked, What? Jim said, I saw this mess coming 2 months ago with the first report and started making plans for you once I heard Brittany wanted to be with someone else. Tom said, She probably already is. Jim shook his head. Nope, she's holding off for the trip. My information is reliable on that. She wants to tell you first. Tom said, So you're trying to set me up with some stranger to keep me in check? Jim said, Basically, yes, but none of these girls have more than 3 past relationships, so I wouldn't call any of them names. Julie, who is 21, has 3. Jenny is 20 years old, and Jessica is 19. Both have boyfriends right now, except for Julie, who had a brief encounter with a professional football player she met one night. You won't be able to leave your situation. If you try, they might hurt you and possibly send you to prison for a long time. They have the power to make life difficult for anyone who crosses them. You are too valuable to them. Your skills in business are very rare, and by the time you turn 30, you could be part of several company boards. Jim said, You have a choice to make. You can be alone and unhappy, or you can be with a lovely woman who really finds you attractive. You are handsome and wealthy, which are big advantages. In any case, all 3 women are interested in you. I think you like Jessica the most because you've spent the most time talking to her. All 3 would be happy to have a special relationship with you. Jim looked a bit sad and said, I'll let you think about it. I know I added even more to your full plate. Thursday, October 24th, 2024, Brittany turned in bed and asked, One for the road? She reached for him gently. Patrick interrupted and said, You said no, right? Tom replied, Nope, I was with her, twice. That was the last time I saw her. Patrick asked, So what happened next? Friday, October 25th, 2024. Tom woke up early while Brittany was getting ready for her trip. He had taken the day off, hoping to change her mind about leaving. Tom called in for personal reasons. Tom said, This is wrong and we will get a divorce. Brittany replied, It was just a moment and I still love you. I'll see you in 2 weeks so we can plan for the holidays. They went back and forth on the same point several times until Brittany stood up to grab her bag. Tom said, This is your last chance, Brittany. Brittany responded, You won't leave me. You are mine forever. I wanted you, and I have you. I planned it this way from the very start. Brittany paused and Tom noticed. Tom asked, Planned from the start? Brittany sighed and replied, Well, you should know. After I broke up with Chad, I wanted you. I even paid him $500 to kiss Allie. She had no idea it was coming. Tom had to take a moment to take in what she said. Allie was telling the truth that day. The whole situation was a setup. Tom felt like everything was falling apart. Tom said, You never really cared about me. Brittany shook her head. I cared about you the day you said yes to going to prom with me. That weekend at the hotel, I was completely in love with you. I've loved you since then. I just need something more now. I will love you forever. I just need more. Brittany then asked, How about a goodbye kiss? Tom looked at her in surprise, then shook his head. His whole life had been built on a lie. Allie had been innocent, and he had hurt her heart because he didn't believe her. Then she passed away, and he felt the weight of that truth. The burden of guilt felt heavy. Brittany shrugged her shoulders and walked outside to a limousine. An hour later, Tom was imagining all sorts of scenarios in his head about what might have happened between her and Rainier. These thoughts were troubling him all day. Maybe she changed her mind and didn't go through with anything. At 6:09 that evening, Tom got a text from his father-in-law, Jim. It said, I'm sure you're having the same thoughts I had when my wife had her first affair. You're probably wondering if she went through with it and when it happened. I struggled with these feelings for a year because I had no one to help me. I know you're upset with me, but I'll do my best to support you. I have some information about their trip that might help ease your mind, even though the feeling of betrayal will linger. As you know, the limo picked them up at 9:09 a.m. From there, they started kissing. There were some playful moments in the limo. The private jet took off at 10:26 a.m. By 10:45 a.m., they had changed into more comfortable clothes, and by 10:47 a.m., they were enjoying each other's company. He wasn't anything special in that way. They were intimate 4 times on the plane. She felt happy 3 times. My report says those moments were good but not mind-blowing, so don't believe any stories about him being amazing. He is just a bit different and fits into her art world. You don't owe my daughter any loyalty now. I'll say it again, you owe Brittany nothing. At 6:30, the doorbell rang. Jessica was there with a McDonald's bag, 2 large vanilla milkshakes, and a bright smile. Patrick said, "So you stayed strong and made the right choice." Tom shook his head and replied, "No, Jessica and I were together for 6 years. I cared for her but could never give her the real marriage and family she wanted. We were best friends, really, until she told me we needed to end things because she wanted to start dating and find someone to have a family with. 3 months later, she met a nice guy and married him a year after that. I let her go since she ended things honorably before starting a new relationship. He is a good man and works as a plumber. When he wanted to start his own plumbing business, I helped him get the tools he needed for a very low price. Now, he is doing well and is taking good care of his family. I still help him by finding plumbing jobs for him from time to time. I keep an eye on them. One night at a plumbing convention, he drank too much. A woman was flirting with him, and I had heard that the convention could be wild, so I made sure to have some people around to help keep things in check. You could say I'm like a guardian angel for their marriage. Patrick looked surprised and asked, "So you helped save their marriage?" Tom nodded. It was the right thing to do, and I still do it every year at those conventions. He has cut back on drinking now. He knows he almost messed everything up. I never touched Brittany again, and she was okay with it. She quickly became interested in Gene, just like she had with me. They were together for 5 years until she got tired of him and started dating a painter, then a retired football player. It was amusing how her wild side would show up at the most unexpected times. During her first trip with Rainier, he had an art show where he got involved with the art dealer in a private room. Meanwhile, Brittany secretly met her mom and they both went to a male review, enjoying themselves in the VIP area. She wasn't faithful, even to the man she was with. My father-in-law kept me updated on everything. After Jessica, I dated Emma. After Emma came Kendra and then Alla. The last girlfriend I had until last month was Juanita. I also had many short flings with models. I often felt empty. I would give up all of it in an instant for one loyal partner who truly loved me. Emma was the daughter of one of the board members. We dated for 3 months. She had my twin boys 9 months after we unexpectedly broke up. I figured it out when I found out about them. To some people, I was just a means to have children, even though I was smart and somewhat athletic. I didn't know about my kids for 5 whole years. They were kept away from me all that time. They wanted my genes, and they got what they wanted. Patrick stepped back and exclaimed, "Wow! Why didn't they just have you help Brittany?" Tom replied, "Well, it turns out she can't have kids." Tom finished his drink, took out his wallet, and pulled out a large stack of cash. He said, "Here's everything I have. It's over $1,000. If you have more than you need, please give it to a church to feed those in need. Thanks for talking with me. And now you see how deep and painful regret can be." I wish I could go back to a day that sticks in my mind, Monday, April 24th, 2017. If only I could go to school just a minute earlier and change things. Patrick asked, "Do you really want that?" Tom replied, "Yes, I hurt 2 people. I wish I could go back with what I know now, take Allie to prom, fix everything, and stay in touch with my parents. I would love and care for Allie with all my heart forever." Patrick said, "Wishes should come true in the way we hope. I see you have a kind heart. Just remember." He looked directly at Tom and said, "Some mistakes are meant to happen." Tom felt the effects of his drink for a moment, and everything around him became fuzzy. On Monday, April 24th, 2017, Tom woke up to his alarm. He was confused. He was in his childhood bedroom at his parents' house. The end of Uptown Funk was playing on his clock radio, and the DJ said, "This is Worm, the Big Worm. Today is a sunny April 24th, so go outside and enjoy it." Tom thought, "Where is Patrick? That was just a moment ago. Wait, it's March, not April. What's going on?" His mom came in and said, "You better hurry up." Tom looked around. He was in his old room at his parents' house. He glanced at his hand. His skin looked younger than he remembered. He stood up and walked to the bathroom. His 18-year-old face looked back at him. He couldn't believe it. It was 2017, and he was in his parents' house. Was his life with Brittany just a dream? Tom decided not to think about it. He had to move fast. He dashed out of the house, saying, "Can't eat now, Mom. Bye." Tom ran to school, taking the C hall to get to the D hall just in time to see Brittany talking to Chad. Chad took some money and walked toward the D hall. Tom ran around the B hall to approach from the other side. It was a longer way, but it would let him see for himself what was really happening. Tom saw Chad talking to Allie, and it didn't look good. Chad leaned in and kissed her, but Allie pushed him away. Chad tried to pull her closer, which made Tom angry. Tom stepped up behind Chad and shouted, "That's my girl!" He pushed Chad away and gave him a light punch on the cheek. It didn't knock Chad down, but it made him step back. Chad thought about fighting back, but changed his mind. Allie spoke up. "He just grabbed me. I didn't kiss him back." Tom picked Allie up in his arms and said, "I believe you. I believe you. I love you, Allie. I believe you." As he said this, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. Allie smiled and kissed him gently. She rested her head on his chest and said, "Tom, I love you too." Holding Allie felt perfect, and he kissed her again. She melted into his arms. Tom thought, her kisses are so different from Brittany's, and everyone else wait. What? Tom thought about what was happening. Then he realized that having Allie in his arms was everything he wanted. Epilogue. Brittany went to the prom with Brock Peterson. Tom didn't like Brock, but he saw that Brock was the right fit for the group he was about to join. Brock was tricky and would fit in well. They got married that summer because her father wanted it. They were both not being honest and arguing within a year. As for Tom and Allie, Tom takes a chance on the past. Allie finds her own way back to an old feeling, fixing the past. Section 1. The past is mended. Monday, April 24th, 2017. Tom noticed Allie looking at him with concern. She asked, "Are you okay?" Tom twirled her around in his arms. He realized that the girl with him cared about him, and he cared about her too. Tom smiled and said, "I feel amazing. I will love you for the rest of our lives." Allie shouted happily, "Yes, yes, yes, yes!" After her excited shout, a small crowd began to gather around them. Brittany was walking by when she saw them. She let out a sigh, frowned a bit, and moved on, giving them a quick, unhappy look. Allie had taken Tom's mention of forever as a proposal, even though he hadn't planned it that way. But deep down, he knew he wanted her to be his wife. He wasn't sure about everything he should do, but he knew for sure what he shouldn't do. If he stepped back now, it would hurt Allie, and he promised himself he would never hurt her. He recalled a strange thought. In another time, Allie was sad and upset, but here she was really happy. Allie called her mom. "Mom, Tom just asked me to marry him, and I said yes." Tom heard a joyful scream through the phone. Allie thought for a moment and glanced at her phone. She then looked at him and said, "Friday, I want to be your wife as soon as we can. There's just a 3-day wait, and if we get the license this afternoon after school, we can get married right after school on Friday and have the weekend for, well, do you really mean it?" Tom looked into Allie's eyes and saw both hope and determination. He nodded and said, "Let's do it. We can go to Walmart later to pick out a ring." Allie gazed back at him and said, "I love you, Tom." Tom then called his parents, who were happy but a little worried. They could see that Tom was serious. They liked Allie and supported his choice. Allie pleaded, "Please, can we go to Martin's University? It's my dream, and you were accepted." Tom replied, "I know." He felt nervous because he didn't have the money, and taking out loans would be a huge burden. But Allie's enthusiasm made him feel even more motivated. Allie jumped up with joy. "Oh, Tom, I am so happy right now." The happiness in her eyes warmed his heart. After school, their parents met them at the courthouse with the necessary papers and documents. Tom's mom, Anne, had tears in her eyes, just like Allie's mom, Sandra, as they walked together into the lobby and then into the county clerk's office. Tom's dad, Hank, and Allie's dad, Chuck, patted him on the back. They told Tom that even if he and Allie were young, she was a great choice for him. They made a nice couple and hardly ever argued, which was a good sign. Allie seemed to fit perfectly into Tom's life. It only took 20 minutes to get the marriage license, which was great since they had been waiting since Thursday. After that, they went to Walmart to look at rings in the jewelry section. The families gathered around the counter while Tom checked out the rings. There was a quarter-carat diamond ring priced at $599. Tom felt a bit stressed because that ring would cost him nearly all his savings. Allie then pointed to another ring and said, "That one." Tom looked closely. It was silver with a quarter-carat synthetic white sapphire in the middle, surrounded by small synthetic ruby stones. It was $90. Tom said, "I can get you a real diamond." Allie shook her head and replied, "Tom, the ring means a lot to me because it comes from you. I just want to wear your ring. I don't care what the stone is. I will wear it proudly, like it's a beautiful blue diamond. I like this ring best because it looks nice. All I want is to be Mrs. Calvert. I want to be your wife and nothing else matters. If we didn't have to wait 3 days, I would marry you right now." Tom said, "But you deserve a real." She put her finger gently on his lips and said, "What I deserve is to be your wife. Something special will happen on Friday. A husband and wife will celebrate their love. I had plans for us after the prom, but since we are getting married sooner, we may not need that plan anymore." Tom smiled and pulled her into a hug. She felt safe and happy in his arms every time. Allie leaned close and softly said, "Don't worry about anything. I have some special things I've been using, so everything will be fine." Tom felt excited just thinking about Allie enjoying herself. Friday, April 28th, 2017. It was strange going to school knowing he was getting married later that day. He found it hard to focus on his classes, but he needed to keep doing well in school. At lunch, Allie sat right next to him, their sides touching. She smiled and told him, "I love you," over and over, and he said it back. Brief memories of a different time flashed in his mind. It was painful and sad, but here they were happy. After school, Allie climbed into his car and they headed to the courthouse. She wore a pretty white dress with flowers. There was no big wedding dress, and only their parents were there as the judge quickly said the vows. At 4:30 that afternoon, Judge Calvin Washington declared them husband and wife. Tom wore a simple metal ring, and Allie had a silver band with her sapphire engagement ring. Allie wanted only her closest family there, Tom, his parents, and her parents. No one else was needed. When it was time for the kiss, she kissed him deeply, showing her love and excitement. After the ceremony, both sets of parents dropped them off at her house at 5 in the evening. They told them they would be away for 90 minutes. As they walked inside, the small living room had a balloon that said, "Congratulations." The hallway to the bedrooms was on the right side of the 4-room house. Allie's room was the first door on the left, right before the bathroom, and her parents' room at the end. 2 more shiny balloons were tied to her door. One was white with silver letters that said, "Love," and the other was a white heart with gold letters that read, "Wedding Day." Her room had been tidied up, and her bed was neatly made. A note rested on the pillow along with a stack of clean towels. The note said, "Use these to catch any spills so you won't have to wash the bedding." She wore a summer dress. She smiled at him and said, "Time to get my dress off, Mr. Calvert." As he worked his way down, he caught glimpses of her curves. She looked a little nervous but happy. Tom helped her remove the dress, and she stood before him smiling. She moved on to the bed, still smiling as Tom joined her. She expressed her eagerness, saying, "I really need you close to me now." They shared a moment of quiet connection as he moved closer to her, focusing on being together. Allie gently guided him, whispering, "Take it slow." They were both nervous, and it all happened very quickly. Tom felt a bit embarrassed afterward, but Allie was overjoyed, hugging him tightly and saying, "That was amazing! I love you so much!" Tom sighed, feeling self-conscious. It was so quick. Allie, still smiling, reassured him, "It doesn't matter. We're not virgins anymore, and I'm so happy that it was with you." She cheerfully celebrated, then took a moment to clean up. When she noticed he was ready again, she smiled and welcomed him back, eager to share more time together. He managed to hold on for 5 minutes and made her feel good for a bit. After trying again, she felt happy, but he hadn't quite caught his breath yet. It was 6:30 when they heard a voice from outside. "Time for dinner!" They got dressed and walked out. Tom's father held the back door of his SUV open for them to get in. They sat in the back of Tom's parents' old car until they arrived at Outback, where they had steak and potatoes for dinner. Both parents paid for the meal. Tom knew it was a bit of a sacrifice for them, so he said thank you. Tom's father stood up to make a toast. To my son and his lovely wife. Allie, you are now like the daughter I always wanted, and my wife feels the same way. We may not have much, but I believe young love can be strong. I married your mom at 18, and 10 months later, I had you. I don't regret a thing. I am happier today than I was on our wedding day. You will need to put in some effort, but if you really love her, things can work out. Allie's dad stood up and said, Tom, you are now like a son to me. My wife and I, along with your parents, have come to an agreement. You will live with us until you go to college. Chuck chuckled and added, my very small home. And being 18 with a dad, I've got a story for that too. My wife was really young when she had Allie, only 16. It wasn't the best choice, and I couldn't even marry her until Allie was almost 2. But I don't regret it at all. I'm happier now than when I finally got to marry her. You will need to work for it, but if you truly love her, you can make it happen. Dinner was a lovely event that brought both families together. Tom and Allie were clearly told that they were now part of this new family. They returned home at 8 o'clock. Allie hugged and kissed her parents before saying, we're going to my room for some fun. Good night. She took Tom to her room and closed the door behind them. After spending some time together, she lay on top of him, feeling tired but happy. She said, I feel so good right now. Tom held her close and replied, me too. For a moment, Tom thought about some difficult times they had faced, and he reminded himself to help Allie have the life she dreamed of. As they cuddled, Tom thought he heard a sound. A minute later, he heard it again. There was a sound of laughter coming from the other room. Allie's mom, Sandra, was having fun with her dad. Tom asked, isn't that a little weird for you? Allie shook her head and smiled. No way! My parents really love each other. Besides, this happens almost every night when my dad is home, so I'm used to it. When I was little, I walked in on them a lot. Mom just said that there is a special way mommies and daddies hug that helps them love each other even more. Allie giggled and replied, I told them they should always do that. Tom squirmed a bit and said, I don't think I want to hear about that right now. Allie laughed. When a lot of my friends' parents started separating, I saw it as a good sign. My parents still love each other after 20 years. I want that kind of love for us. Tom needed to use the bathroom, so he got up, put on his shorts, and walked into the hallway, turning left towards the bathroom door. He paused when he saw Allie's dad walking toward the bathroom from the other side. It was dark, but the moonlight showed he wasn't wearing anything. Chuck mumbled, sorry, and went into the bathroom. Tom returned to the doorway looking shocked. Allie asked, what's wrong? Tom replied, your dad just went into the bathroom in front of me. He was not wearing any clothes and seemed to be cleaning up after making some noise. Allie said, well, my family often sleeps without clothes, and it's never been a problem. For me, it's always been normal. If I need to use the bathroom, I just go. I don't bother putting anything on. With only one bathroom, you go in, take care of your business, and then come back to bed. I have seen my parents without clothes many times, and they have seen me too. I don't feel awkward about it. I just do what I need to do and move on. Speaking of that, I need to use the bathroom. She walked out with ease as her dad came out and said, good night, Dad, as he finished cleaning up. A couple of minutes later, she came back and said, it's your turn. When Tom returned to their room, he said, you are so relaxed about it, but at school, you dress so modestly. Allie replied, I've always known my parents slept this way, just like I do. It's just sleep, Tom. It's comfortable and feels natural. I've walked into the kitchen for breakfast without any clothes on, and no one seems to mind. School is different. It has its own rules. Tom replied, at home, it was the opposite. You had to wear clothes unless you were in your own room or bathroom with the door shut. Allie shrugged and said, I guess we're just different. Saturday, April 30th, 2017. Tom woke up, got dressed, and stepped into the living room that opened up to the kitchen. He found it hard to look Chuck in the eye. Chuck said, sorry. Sandra noticed the silence between Tom and Chuck and said, no reason to be sorry. Tom, we are not strict about nudity, but we also don't worry much about clothes. We all sleep without clothes since we became a family. Allie has done that her whole life. We care about you like a son we never had, but we won't change our lives just for you. Allie walked from her room into the kitchen, gave her dad a quick kiss on the cheek, and said, "Good morning, Daddy." Allie wasn't wearing any clothes, but neither of her parents seemed to mind. Tom was surprised. Did you forget to get dressed?" Allie shook her head. "Everyone here has seen me. It's just a body, and I'm not in front of anyone who hasn't seen me before." She went to the toaster, put in 2 pieces of bread, and stood there waiting for it to pop up. Once it was ready, she took the toast and sat down next to Tom. Allie gave him a side hug and said, "I woke up really happy today being your wife." Tom sighed. "I didn't know you felt so relaxed about being naked at home." Allie looked Tom in the eyes and said, "If it makes you uncomfortable, I can go get dressed. You are my husband, and I am your wife." Allie looked upset but stood up and walked toward her room. Tom sighed and said, "Wait." He added, "This means a lot to you, doesn't it? Can you tell me more?" Allie said softly, "I feel nice and comfortable. It makes me feel free. I really, really like it." She turned to go back to her bedroom. Tom said, "Please, hold on." Allie stopped and looked at him. Tom asked, "Does this mean a lot to you?" Allie nodded. Tom said, "Then I was wrong to try to change you. I've seen nothing wrong, so I should fit into your life, not the other way around." He pulled her in for a hug. Every time they hugged, she seemed to relax in his arms. She sighed and said, "Thank you. I love you with all my heart." She sat down again and finished her toast. Tom joked, "Besides, what reasonable person complains about their wife being bare, right?" Allie chuckled, "Not my wonderful husband." Tom was having a good time with his wife when they heard some loud noises coming from her parents' room. He tried to ignore it, but Allie's mom was clearly enjoying herself. The noises went from soft to really loud. Tom couldn't help but laugh, and soon Allie was laughing too. They held each other tightly, still giggling. Allie sighed contentedly and snuggled closer to her husband, still chuckling. They had already shared some special moments that day, and Allie was starting to feel a bit tired. He kissed her gently on the forehead as they laughed for another 5 minutes until the noises from the other room finally faded, and they heard someone step into the bathroom. Monday, May 1st, 2017. Allie jumped into her new life with excitement, asking Tom to take her to the courthouse and the local office right after school so she could change her name to her married name. Every part of her was becoming Allie Calvert. Her driver's license, social security card, and even her library card had all been changed within a week, while they waited for the new copies to arrive in the mail. When they walked out of the federal building at 5, they were the last ones inside as the door was locked behind them. Allie wasn't finished yet. She headed into the local indie bank, which closed at 6 in the evening, and insisted on opening a joint account. While Allie was usually easygoing in some ways, she was determined that their lives would fully merge. As they stepped out onto the sidewalk, Allie said, "You can keep your personal account, but you need to move everything into our joint account as soon as you get it. There's no more Tom and no more Allie. It's now Tom and Allie together." Tom chuckled. Usually Allie got what she wanted with a soft request and a gentle, "please." But today, Allie was firm about joining their lives completely. Allie discovers a new part of herself. Friday, May 5th, 2017. It was prom night. Tom sat in the living room, waiting for Allie. She finally came out of her parents' room wearing a pretty blue floral summer dress that reached her knees. They couldn't afford a fancy, expensive dress for prom. Allie usually didn't wear makeup, but tonight was different. She had on some light mascara and a little blush. Her hair was styled and pulled back, but it still flowed down to her shoulders. Tom smiled at her and said, "You look beautiful." When they arrived at the school, they parked in the lot. As they walked toward the entrance, a big limo pulled up. The driver opened the door, and out came Brock Peterson with Brittany. Tom suddenly remembered his time with Brittany, but quickly pushed that thought away. He looked at Allie and knew he had made the right choice. Brittany had liked him for a while, but with Allie, he felt he had a chance for something lasting if he put in the effort. He promised himself to love Allie fully. Allie asked, "Are you jealous?" Tom laughed and said, Of what? A big limousine? Allie replied. Of the head cheerleader with her fancy life. Tom looked Allie in the eyes and said, Not a chance. Not ever. Allie was confused and asked, What do you mean? Tom said, Forget it. No, I do not want Brittany. He thought to himself, They are perfect for each other. He smiled at Allie, took her hand, and they went into the prom together. As they walked in, Allie asked, Will you dance with me? Tom smiled back. He wasn't great at dancing, but he knew that trying was what mattered. They danced slowly to Stay With Me by Sam Smith. She looked at him, moved closer, and gave him a soft kiss. He felt a little silly trying to fast dance to Shut Up and Dance With Me, but it made her smile even more. After that, they danced to more slow songs that were easy for him to follow. She just wanted to be in his arms and sway gently, sometimes stopping to share soft kisses. When a lively song began, Allie decided to take a break and headed to a table with snacks and drinks. Allie chatted with some of her friends while Tom talked to other players on the football team. When the slow songs played again, Allie came back, and without saying anything, Tom took her back to the dance floor for more slow dancing. At 10, the prom officially ended, and everyone began to leave. Emily, the co-captain of the cheer team, approached them and said, Hey, you two, there's an after-prom party at Lake Nashoni. Allie surprised Tom by asking, Can we go? Tom agreed and sent a message to her parents, letting them know they would be back later. He received a reminder about the dangers of drinking and driving and assured them he wouldn't drink. 20 minutes later, they arrived at Lake Nashoni. The term lake felt too grand for what it actually was. It was an old quarry that had filled with water. It was set into a hillside. The place had been deserted for a long time and was known for being a spot where couples would share moments together. In the middle of a cleared area, there was a bonfire. To one side, a stack of tires held 2 wooden platforms. On one platform stood a keg, and on the other was a bowl of punch. A portable radio played upbeat music. Jerry Rawling, a player from Tom's football team, waved him over while Allie chatted with her friends. An hour later, Tom was hanging out with some of his teammates when Allie approached with her friend Emily and 3 other girls from their senior class. Allie was holding a cup in her hand. Allie called out, Hey, Tom! Look at me, Allie said, clearly tipsy and having a hard time standing straight. The women adjusted their dresses and took off their shoes. They danced around the fire. After a few moments, Allie playfully called out, Catch my dress! She tossed it, but it landed near the flames. Allie giggled and said, Oops! Then she swayed to the music. Terry pointed and said, Hey, I can see your wife! Tom replied, Yeah. Terry asked, Aren't you jealous? Tom paused for a moment and said, Not unless you do something. Terry smirked, And what if I do? Tom shot him a look and replied, I'll toss you into the fire. Terry laughed, but Tom stayed serious. To lighten things up, Tom said, Just enjoy the performance. The women danced and moved in the glow of the fire. Many of the young men watched closely. After a while, Allie started to stumble more and looked a bit unsteady. She almost stumbled toward the fire and then leaned back, spreading her legs wide. Tom quickly stepped in and helped her up. Allie looked at him with sleepy eyes and said, Hi, Tom. I'm not wearing anything. I like being free. Tom chuckled and replied, You've had way too much to drink. Come sit with me. Allie seemed puzzled and said, I'm not drunk. What was that word? Oh, drink? Allie climbed onto his lap and Tom said, You know they mixed something into the punch, right? Allie looked confused and replied, I care about you, Tom. She just sat quietly on his lap, enjoying his company and feeling carefree. Tom asked, Where are your shorts? Allie shrugged. I don't know. I wanted to surprise you. Tom laughed and said, Well, you definitely surprised me. Allie smiled and made a little noise. Tom suggested, Maybe we should head out. Allie shook her head and said, I like it here. I like being free. I like being here with you. I think I should be free more often. Naked is nice. She began to hum a little song. I like being free. I like being free. She giggled and leaned against him. An hour later, Allie was still very tipsy, and Tom thought it was best to take her home. It was almost 1 in the morning, so he helped her up and carried her to his car, then drove her home. Her parents were surprised when they saw their tipsy daughter being brought into the house. Tom explained, She didn't know they added something to the punch. It seems that alcohol made her less shy about being free. She told me she likes it a lot. She's usually so quiet, but she's different when we're alone. That caught me off guard. Chuck stood up and offered his hand to his wife. He said, "We just wanted to make sure you got home safely. Thanks for looking out for her, Tom." Sandra then pulled Chuck toward their bedroom, thinking of their evening together. Allie said, struggling to keep her balance, "I want to dance slow with you. Being free is a fun way to dance with you." Tom started hearing strange noises coming from her parents' room again. He chuckled. It was funny how much her parents liked each other. After a couple of songs, Allie stood up suddenly, wide-eyed, and then "Bae!" Tom sighed. Allie had just thrown up all over him. It was a mix of punch from the prom and part of her dinner. Tom shook his head, laughed a little, and then helped Allie to the bathroom. He was surprised at how much came out of someone so small. It was tricky to keep her steady. The shower was big and built on the side of the house. It was far enough back that there were only 2 small walls around the bathroom, but there wasn't really any privacy from the toilet. Tom was helping his wife out of the shower when they heard loud knocks on the door. "Hurry up! I need the toilet!" Sandra called out. While he was trying to help her brush her teeth, Tom opened the door a bit to say, "Just a minute." But Sandra didn't wait. She pushed the door open, saying, "I need to clean up and I really have to go." Tom was surprised. She was a pretty 34-year-old with medium brown hair that reached her shoulders and a kind face sprinkled with light freckles on her nose. She had a nice figure, typical for her age, and she was definitely an attractive woman. Allie noticed her mother and nervously remarked, "Oh, my mom is here." Tom couldn't cover himself since he was holding Allie, who swayed and added, "Hey, it's okay." Sandra, needing to use the bathroom, moved the towels aside and said, "I really need to go, so you might want to leave." Tom quickly tried to help Allie out, but Sandra had already started. A few minutes later, Sandra came out and apologized to Tom. 4 people live in a small 4-room house that is 600 square feet with just 1 bathroom. There isn't much privacy in the bathroom. The only time anyone can have some quiet time is when the bedroom door is closed. Sometimes we end up using the toilet while someone is in the shower. Welcome to our unusual little life. It's not awkward for us, but I really dislike quick showers, so feel free to come in while I shower because I take my time. We've all seen each other anyway, so it doesn't matter. She made a bold comment, looking at him and said, "By the way, my daughter is very lucky." Sandra raised her eyebrows, kissed him on the cheek, and laughed as she returned to her bedroom. Tom helped his wife back to the bathroom, brushed her teeth for her, then carried her to their room and tucked her in under the covers. He kissed her goodnight, changed into his pajamas, and climbed in next to her. Even though she had a bit too much to drink, she cuddled up to him. Saturday, May 6th, 2017. Tom woke up to his phone buzzing. It buzzed again and kept going. Allie's phone started buzzing too. Tom carefully moved his wife's arm and looked at his phone. "Oh, no," Allie groaned. "I feel awful." Tom replied, "That's what happens when you drink too much. That punch you had was mixed with something strong." He quickly put on some shorts and went to the kitchen. Her parents were there looking worried. Her mom asked, "How is she feeling?" Tom grimaced. "Not as bad as she will later." Suddenly, there was a loud scream from her bedroom. Tom added, "I just remembered there are photos and videos of her from last night. It all started as a dare by the punch bowl and got out of hand." Both of her parents looked uncomfortable. Tom continued, "There are quite a few, actually." Allie walked into the kitchen looking upset. "Tom, I'm so sorry. Please don't be angry with me." Tom shook his head. "I'm not even upset." Tom reassured her. No one crossed the line, and that's what matters. Allie hesitated, then asked, "You're really not upset? Everyone saw me when I fell." Tom handed her an aspirin and some water, saying, "We're fine. You might feel a bit embarrassed for a while, though." Allie blushed, and there was a brief silence. Tom noticed something and asked, "You actually enjoyed the attention, didn't you? Being in that situation, it gave you a bit of a thrill, right? Be honest, I can tell." Allie blushed even more and quietly admitted, "Yes, I did. And I don't really want to cover up. You said you liked it, and I do too." Tom chuckled. "I'm not going to complain. Just remember our boundaries. No one should touch anything a bikini would cover, And the same goes for us. No kissing for us except for each other. Allie sighed. It's embarrassing that they'll make fun of me on Monday. Tom pulled her in for a hug and said, It's okay. Tom glanced at his phone. There were over 500 pictures and 48 videos. Allie rested her head against him, trying to ease her headache. Tom smiled and said, Really, we're fine. I'm keeping all the pictures and videos. You look great. Allie winced and said, Monday is going to be something. Monday, May 8th, 2017. Something was an understatement. Tom stayed by her side as much as he could to show that he was on her side. But the other girls giggled, and the boys seemed to stare at her. Her only friends were the other girls who had also faced the same situation. One couple, Alicia and John, had just broken up. The giggles lasted all day, and Allie felt miserable. But things improved a bit after school. After school, Allie answered her phone while walking next to Tom. She felt more and more excited. Allie told Tom that she and Emily, along with her ex-boyfriend Bryce, were invited to the coolest club in North Indianapolis, the Barnstable Club. She had won 4 tickets to go. Tuesday, May 9th, 2017. Tuesday felt a lot like Monday, filled with laughter and some quiet teasing. After the 4th period, there was a meeting about graduation for all the seniors in the auditorium. Allie sat next to Tom, leaning into him as if to hide. Allie was feeling upset and began to cry. Tom couldn't take it anymore. He lifted her into his arms, carried her to the front, and stood her down gently before taking the microphone. Tom spoke with firmness. We all know what happened, and I want to make something clear. I am proud to have a wonderful wife like Allie. No, we are not splitting up, and no, I'm not angry. I think she's amazing. I feel really angry at all of you who are laughing at my wife and making her feel bad. She didn't know that her drink was mixed with something else. It was an innocent mistake. She believed it was just a different drink. I'm not upset about that. We all learn from these things. We all know how beautiful my wife is, and she truly is. So to those of you who are laughing, how many of you get to be with someone as lovely as her almost every day? I doubt it's many. Most of the older girls said, "Oh!" and the guys stopped laughing. Tom picked up Allie and gave her a long kiss. She felt warm and said, "Tom, I love you so much." He settled back into his seat with her beside him. She snuggled in closer to him because he had just told everyone that she was his. She couldn't help but cry a little. He supported her, and it felt wonderful. Section 3. The only way for bad to win is for good people to do nothing. Friday, May 12th, 2017. Tom wore his best pants and a nice button-down shirt for graduation. He waited while Allie got ready, chatting with her parents in the living room. When Allie finally came out, Tom smiled and said, "You look amazing." Allie wore her graduation dress, which also worked as a party dress. It was black with a V-neck that went down to her chest and had 2 straps over her shoulders. She could wear it because she would have her graduation gown on for most of the ceremony, only taking it off in the last half hour after everyone got their diplomas. The dress was very short, and when she turned around, Sandra giggled as she saw the dress. Chuck, however, kept quiet and simply said, "Have a good night, kids." Tom opened the door for his wife. When she got in, she adjusted her dress as she sat down. Tom chuckled and said, "It might be hard to drive dressed like that." Allie laughed and replied, "Oh, I know." They arrived at the Barnstable Club at 7 that evening. The Barnstable Club was a private dance club. A bouncer stood at the main entrance deciding who could enter based on how they looked. Next to it was another door marked "Ticket Holders," with a different bouncer. Tom checked their tickets, which were unusual. They were made of plastic and said "one-day membership" instead of "admission." The bouncer scanned their tickets with a special device that lit up green. He then pointed and said, "Table 10. They walked inside. Tom and Allie were both good-looking, but most people around them looked like fashion models. They scanned the room until Tom spotted their table. They sat down next to each other, and Allie smiled as she soaked in the lively scene of the trendy club. Emily came in with her date, Bryce, 10 minutes later. Bryce was actually her recent ex. They had decided to break up because they were going to different colleges and wanted to enjoy their first summer as adults without any ties. He wore his graduation pants and a button-up shirt, just like Tom. Emily was dressed in a pretty blue dress that came down to her mid-thigh. A slow song began to play, and Allie gave Tom a hopeful look. He understood what she wanted without her saying a word. She seemed to know him very well, both in his thoughts and feelings. Allie loved to follow along and often got what she wished for with just a soft request and a sweet kiss. She had a special hold on him. They danced to 2 slow songs. Allie raised her dress after seeing another woman do the same. She placed Tom's hands on her lower back and smiled. No one said anything. Emily laughed when Tom and Allie returned to the table. "I can't believe you just danced like that," she said. Allie looked at Emily and replied, "I've changed a lot since that time we did that fun little game after prom. I enjoy it, and Tom is fine with it as long as we follow the rules we made. No surprises. Basically, I can't touch a guy where he has his swimwear, and no one can touch me where my bikini covers. It's a good rule." Emily nodded, then looked over and gasped. She pointed to a table far away and said, "That's Tyler Jensen. He plays for the Colts." He was 6'4" and looked just like a tall, blonde hero from the movies. He was much more attractive than any other guy in the building, maybe even in the whole area. He noticed Emily looking at him, then turned his gaze to Allie. He walked over and asked her, completely ignoring Tom, "I saw you dancing. You seem like a lot of fun. Want to dance?" Allie smiled big and replied, "Oh, no, thank you." Tyler was surprised and asked, "No?" Allie repeated, "No. Tyler insisted. It's just a dance." Allie responded, "Any girl who dances with you might end up going home with you. We both know that. You look great, but I'm married, and setting limits is the best way to avoid trouble." Tyler said, "Your husband must be very unsure of himself." Allie laughed. "That won't change my mind or my husband's." Tom smiled at Allie and gave her a side hug. He laughed and said, "Dude, I'm completely straight, but if I were single, I might think about being with you." Everyone at the table laughed except for Tyler, who felt hurt and upset. He got up and left, shaking his head. That didn't happen often. Tom kissed his wife on the cheek and said, "I know that wasn't easy, thank you." Allie replied, "It wasn't as hard as you think. I wanted to say yes, but I know I can never be unfaithful to you. I don't want to lose you." She smiled, took his hand, and squeezed it gently. She kissed him and said, "My grandma always said a good man keeps a special place in his heart for one loyal woman. I know I hold that special place in your heart, Tom. I will never let anyone take that away. If I ever lose that spot, I know I can never get it back." Tom was touched by her words. Emily said, "Aw." Allie watched Tyler closely, curious about how he was feeling. He looked around the room for a while, taking sips of his drink and occasionally glancing at Allie with a serious look. Allie said, "Keep an eye on Tyler. He's making his move again." She pointed out to everyone that Tyler was walking over to a table with a woman who looked to be in her 30s, dressed in a red dress. She was sitting next to a man who seemed to be her husband, based on the ring on her finger. They were across from another couple that was also married and about the same age. The other woman wore a white dress with a low cut. The woman in the red dress had long blonde hair and wore a dress that showed off her legs. Tyler approached her and asked if she wanted to dance. Without hesitation, she stood up. They danced well together, but the fast song didn't give Tyler many chances to get closer. The next song was slow, allowing Tyler to gently touch the woman's hand. This was just enough to avoid making her husband angry. As the second slow song played, the husband looked unhappy and tense. The woman gazed into Tyler's eyes, clearly enchanted. Tyler whispered something in her ear. She smiled but didn't reply. Allie turned to her friends and said, "You can see a marriage falling apart." The woman returned to her table and sat for a few moments. At first it seemed like they were having a disagreement, but soon they appeared to be getting along better. Allie noticed the woman intentionally spill some water on herself. Then she stood up, likely to dry off. Her friend in the white dress followed her. Allie said, "I need to go to the restroom." She got up and walked toward the restrooms. Allie was about 30 seconds behind the two women. The woman in the red dress talked to the woman in the white dress, who nodded and went back to the table. Allie noticed a marriage coming to an end, thought for a moment, and came up with a plan. As she walked by the woman, she could not help but cringe and shake her head, saying, "That's too bad." The woman stopped and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Allie replied, "I just feel sad. I'm watching a marriage fall apart." The woman said, "I don't know what you mean." Allie explained, "He tried to flirt with me half an hour ago. My heart raced when he asked me to dance. I know what you are thinking. Luckily, I was smart enough not to get up." The woman shrugged. "It's just for fun." Allie shook her head. "And it breaks the heart of someone who seems to really care about you." "For how long?" The woman said, 10 years. I can't pass up this chance." Allie pointed at her rings and said, "The rings on my finger are worth just over $100. The big stone is only a sapphire. We're young and don't have much money. Today you have more money than I do and a husband who seems to really care for you, but by tomorrow morning I will be much richer than you." The woman replied, but Allie just shrugged and said, "I can't stop you. My grandma always said that every man, at least every good man, has a special place in his heart. He saves that place for a woman who means everything to him. That's his wife. All he wants is love, kindness, and loyalty from her. If you go back to Tyler, he will push you out of that special place in his heart. Even if you two make up later, you will never have that spot again. You will only be a close friend for the rest of your life. There's a big chance he will leave you. If you go back to Tyler, you are hurting everything he stands for and the last 10 years he has shared with you." The woman said, "But it's just a moment." Allie shook her head. "You know that's not true. You are lying to yourself. Your feelings are pushing you to choose the strongest partner, but you need to think about your heart and mind. If you decide to be with Tyler now, you might lose your place in his heart forever." Allie shrugged and replied, "It's up to you. Tomorrow morning I'll wake up next to my husband who will look me in the eyes and say he loves me. I will see his love shining back at me. He is my heart, and I am his. Tomorrow, after betraying him, you will look into your husband's eyes and see that love is gone. All you will have is one night of excitement. I know that my husband cannot match what Tyler offers, but he's not someone who would just let me go easily. He is a caring mix of strong and gentle. On Sunday, I will wake up to see his love lighting up his eyes again, and you might find your husband distant and hurt. By Monday, he could decide to leave and talk to a lawyer." The woman's expression softened. She let out a frustrated sigh. "Ugh!" Allie was surprised. "You know I'm right, don't you?" The woman began to cry and asked, "How do I make this right?" Allie replied, "The most important thing is to apologize. If your husband is smart, he knows he's not in the same league as Tyler. No one here is. Tell him you were just a little caught up and that you're sorry. If he reacts well, tell him you really want to dance with him. He'll likely agree because that shows you're still committed to him. You might have come close to crossing a line, but you didn't. Hopefully that'll work. After a couple of dances, show him you're serious about making things right. Let him know you want to make it up to him in the most personal way. If he accepts, ask if he wants you to adjust your dress. If he says no, let him lead from there. Encourage him to hold you close and let him know you're his. If he seems receptive, keep reminding him how much you regret dancing with Tyler. Try to kiss him, and if he responds positively, show him how sincere you are. Earlier tonight, I danced a couple of dances with my dress a bit higher, so the rules here are a bit unclear." Allie adjusted her dress slightly to show her confidence, saying, "See, I came here to catch my husband's attention, and it's working. Tonight, I will give myself completely to him, and afterward, I will lie in his arms and think about how much he cares for me and how he is mine and only mine." Allie laughed. The security team didn't say a word to me when I was dancing, and I was barely covered for 2 songs. The woman introduced herself. "I'm Lindsay Ballard." Allie smiled back. "I'm Allie Calvert." Lindsay looked at Allie with tears in her eyes and said, "I almost messed up my marriage." Allie replied, "It's like a bullet. If it almost hit you, then it missed you." Allie added, "When you are dancing with your husband, and if you're feeling playful, just follow what I do." Tyler walked into the room and saw the 2 women talking. He gave a serious look when Lindsay shook her head at him. Lindsay hugged Allie tightly and said, "Thank you." Allie smiled. She waited a couple of minutes to give Lindsay time to return, making sure it didn't seem like they had talked. Then she walked back to the table and said to Tom, "Let's go dance." Her smile hinted at happy moments they might share later. As Allie passed by Lindsay, she saw her crying on her husband's shoulder. She heard him say, "I forgive you." Allie smiled, feeling she had achieved something important for the good side that night. Looking into Tom's eyes, Allie noticed how he awkwardly moved to the slow music, swaying more than anything else. She loved him for trying. He wasn't a great dancer, but he did it because of her. He had given her his heart willingly, and she cherished that she held a special place in his feelings. As the second song played, Allie lifted her dress and playfully encouraged him, saying, "Feel free to hold me." She couldn't believe how much fun she was having at that moment. Allie casually noticed Lindsay stepping away from her husband. She adjusted her dress, then playfully handed something to him with a smile. Lindsay blushed, but continued to look at her husband, who was grinning widely. Allie took a bold step and slid her dress off her shoulders, letting it fall. There was a soft gasp, but no one reacted strongly. She draped her dress over Tom's shoulder. Now, Allie danced in just her shoes, glowing with the love she saw in her husband's eyes. Lindsay kissed him and smiled, then moved closer to him as they danced together. After a moment, Lindsay looked at Allie and quietly talked to her husband. He gave a cheeky nod in response. Allie noticed Lindsay's curves and felt a rush of excitement. Lindsay leaned in toward her husband and gave him a warm kiss. She held him close, enjoying the rhythm of their dance in his arms. After 3 songs, a security guard approached and cleared his throat, signaling the end of the fun. They all straightened up, putting their clothes back on and smiling. Their husbands and boyfriends looked on, remembering how special the night was. Allie smiled, happy to see that Lindsay had made it through the evening without any problems in her relationship. She glanced over at Lindsay and her husband, who were talking at the table. They both looked up at her, and Allie raised her glass of water and nodded. Lindsay and her husband stood up and walked over to her. Allie greeted them with a warm smile. The man extended his hand to Allie and said, "Thank you. I know what you did for us. I can never repay you, but I really appreciate it." Allie replied, "Please don't be angry with her. Every woman here can feel the charm he brings." He nodded and said, "I think I could be attracted to him if I tried." Tom added, "I said the same thing earlier." The man continued, "I'm upset, but I understand how these things work. I still love her, and I can see why everyone is drawn to him. We won't be coming back here again, though. I wonder who he will affect next. Thanks to you, I didn't have to face that alone. If she had left me here by myself, it would have been different. I'm James Ballard, and this is my wife, Lindsay. We need to go now." Lindsay said, "I want to show him how much I care about him all night." He wrapped his arm around her and led her outside. They were just about to dance when Tyler came up and said, "You messed up my night twice. You owe me a dance." Allie replied, "No, I don't. You were trying to win over a married woman. You were close to ruining her life." Tyler said, "Her marriage is not my concern." Allie replied, "You always seem to go after women who are married. I think that's your style." Tyler smirked, "And what of it?" Allie said, "You're like a hunter. I wonder how many happy marriages you have broken." Tyler shrugged, "I don't care. Most will stay together." Allie replied, "But it's not much of a marriage for those who do, and I believe many will be unhappy within a year." "A marriage needs trust, and the women you charm won't trust you." Tyler said, "Just one dance. You owe me." Allie replied, "Seriously? Go away. I'm married, just like all the other women you approach. The only difference is that I am loyal." Tyler noticed everyone in the room watching him, and it didn't look good. He frowned and left. A few minutes later, Tyrone Washington, a player for the Indiana Pacers, came over and asked Emily, "Would you like to dance?" Emily smiled and went to the dance floor without thinking. Her date, Bryce, shrugged, stood up, and said, "We broke up last week because we're going to different colleges. We don't have any ties now. I'm just here on a date for tonight." He grinned and added, "Hey, it's a fun moment for her, right?" Bryce shrugged again and said, "It's tough, but I didn't buy the tickets, so there's no use sticking around. I'm out." Tyrone can take her home when he's finished with her. Bryce left feeling hurt, but not as broken as the husbands who were betrayed by their wives going home with Tyler. Tom frowned and said, "That was tough." Allie shrugged. "Just a little. She told me they split up last week, but she won the tickets to come here tonight. They cost $200 each." A few minutes later, 2 big men approached Allie and Tom. The taller one said, "I'm sorry, but I need to ask you to leave. Tyler is really upset, and that's making management unhappy." Tom replied, "So Tyler claims this place for himself, huh?" The man grinned and said, "It's not just Tyler." Tom shrugged again and said, "Well, I'm not going to start a fight with a giant. Let's go?" Allie smiled and stood up, moving closer to Tom as she straightened her dress. She looked at him and said, "Sure. Plus, I'm really looking forward to spending time with you soon." Saturday, May 13th, 2017. Allie received a call from Emily at 1 in the afternoon. They chatted for half an hour. Tom asked, "Can you give me a short version?" Allie nodded and shared the main points. Emily went back to Tyrone's place after dancing. He's quite well endowed. They got right into it, and at first it was a bit uncomfortable for her until she adjusted. They started having fun, and she experienced some very strong feelings early on, but as things heated up, it became a bit painful for her. This morning she was ready for another round, but it felt tough again. She said it was an exciting experience, though, and it's something she can add to her list of adventures. He invited her over again, but she chose not to go. She said that she might need to see her doctor because of some discomfort. Tom responded, "It's not right what she did, leaving Bryce by himself like that." Allie agreed, saying, yes, leaving him alone was wrong, but it was just a date between two people who aren't together. Tom asked, "If you weren't in a relationship, would you have gone out with Tyler?" Allie replied, "Why do you want to know? Just to be clear, I'm not in a relationship with you now. If I wasn't committed to anyone, I might have gone home with him to see what it was like." Tom sighed. That's tough to hear. Allie continued, "I won't lie to you. The truth is, I was asked out, and I turned him down right away last night. I had the chance, but I chose not to take it. Your question was about if I didn't care about you or our relationship. But honestly, I don't think he would have even asked me if I wasn't wearing your rings. I think he's someone who likes to cause trouble for married men." Tom paused for a moment and asked, "What were you thinking about last night when he came over?" Allie replied, "Do we really have to talk about this? I won't lie, and you know it might hurt." Tom said, "Yes, we need to be completely honest with each other." Allie admitted, "He's the most handsome man I've ever seen. My heart raced when he came in, and it raced even more when he asked me to dance. I knew if I got up I might be tempted, so I quickly turned him down. Please don't be angry. It's just a natural reaction." Tom nodded. "I understand. Many men don't see how easily a woman can be attracted to someone like him." Allie replied, "Tom, don't get me wrong. I turned down that chance because you hold my heart, and I will never give that up, even for the most handsome man I've ever met." She looked deeply into his eyes and said, "I am completely devoted to you, Thomas Calvert." "Never doubt that," Tom said with a chuckle. Tom laughed and added, "I know I'm not as handsome as he is." Allie joined in, surprised. "I can't believe he chose me over Emily. She's prettier and has more curves, yet he approached me first. I feel like he's just someone who saw my rings and thought he could get something from me." Allie looked at Tom and asked, "Are you okay?" Tom nodded and kissed her gently. "Yes, we're doing great. You just confirmed what I already felt deep down. If you had said anything different, I would have thought you were just trying to protect my feelings." On Sunday, May 14th, 2017, Tom woke up at 8 in the morning. He sat up in bed and started looking at his phone. Suddenly, he exclaimed, "Oh, wow!" Allie woke up quickly and asked, "What's going on?" Tom replied, "Bryce just sent me a link. Some guy killed Tyler Jensen last night around 4 in the morning. It seems like it was the husband of a woman he brought home." He forced his way into the house and found his wife in Tyler's bed. In a fit of anger, he shot Tyler several times. Someone mentioned they knew an EMS worker who arrived on the scene. They said they needed a spatula to clean up because Tyler had been shot so many times. The husband is now in police custody, and the wife, who wasn't hurt, is in shock. Allie paused for a moment and said, "I know I should feel sad about Tyler's death, but..." Tom agreed. "I feel the same way." Allie stood up, stretched, and walked outside, passing her family in the kitchen. Tom had accepted that she loved being free and not wearing clothes. Allie went to sit on the front porch since their house was far from the road. She stretched and enjoyed the warmth of the sun on her skin. Allie turned around to see Lindsay standing on the walkway holding an envelope. Lindsay parked her BMW X5 beside the house, and no one noticed her arrive. She said, "This is a gift from my husband and me. It may not seem like much, but I can't really pay you back. It's a $500 gift card for Target. This morning, I saw how much my husband cares, even after our argument last night. He won't let Denise, my friend in the white dress, come over anymore. He found out she was trying to help me with Tyler. Allie replied, "He's right. She's not your true friend. She was helping you push your husband away. It took me, a stranger, to help you see what you were about to lose." Lindsay asked, "You weren't just passing by?" Allie shook her head. "A wise person once said, the only thing necessary for bad things to succeed is for good people to do nothing. I could see trouble was coming, so I followed you to help." Lindsay wondered, "So this wasn't just a coincidence? You stepped in?" Allie nodded. Lindsay gazed at the small, blonde woman who had completely changed her life for the better. Tears began to fall down her cheeks as she realized the impact of Allie's help. Hey, listeners! If you enjoyed watching this video and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss out on what's coming next. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video with Queen Cheating Tales.